Good afternoon, students. I hope you are all fine, and I believe that the online classes are very useful to you all. In the last class, we have learnt Unit 5 Supplementary Reader, a day in 2889 of an American journalist written by Jules Verne. We learnt that this is a science fiction story. It portrays the life of 29th century. This is an age of doing the work with marvel machines without wasting the time and without caring for long distance, mechanized bathroom, dressing room, sky motor car, tube travel, speaking newspaper, etc. That we learn from that story. And today we are going to learn 6th unit, supplementary reader, The Little Hero of Holland, written by Mary Mapps Dodge. Let's see about the poet. Mary Mapps Dodge, 1831 to 1905 was a time period, was an American children's author and editor, best known for her novel Hans Brinker. She was the recognized leader in juvenile literature for almost a third of the 19th century. Dodge conducted St. Nicholas for more than 30 years, and it became one of the most successful magazines for children. She was able to persuade many of the great writers of the world to contribute to her children's magazine: Mark Twain, Louisa May Alcott, Robert Louis Stevenson, Tennyson, etc. Dear student, let's see the mind map of the story. Peter lived in Holland. Dykes saved Holland from Nazi. Peter went to meet his blind friend. On his return, he saw a hole in the dike. He thrust his finger into the hole to stop the water. He stayed there for a whole night. Next morning, a man going to work found Peter in the dikes. Peter saved his land and people. He became the hero of Holland. Let's see the synopsis of the story. Peter was a little boy who lived in Holland. Holland is situated below sea level. A wall called dikes protected the country from North Sea. Even the little children of Holland are aware of the importance of the dikes. They know the dike must be watched every moment. A little hole in it can be a very dangerous thing. One afternoon, Peter's mother wanted him to go across the dikes to take the cakes to his blind friend. Peter spent his time with his blind friend by telling him about his walk along the dikes and many other things. On his way back to home, he heard the sound of trickling water. He saw a small hole in the dike. Peter thrust his finger into the tiny hole to stop the water. He shouted for help, but no one turned up. He stayed there for the whole night. His finger became numb. Next morning, a man going to work found Peter in the dikes. He spread this alarm. The villagers rushed there and mended the hole with shovels. They took Peter to his parents. Thus, Peter saved his land and people and became the hero of Holland. The character of this story: Peter, hero of the story; blind man, Peter's friend; a man going to work, the man who finds Peter at the dike; mother, father, village people. Dear student, let's read the story line by line and find out the meaning of the story. The Little Hero of Holland. This is a true story of a little boy with a brave heart and passionate love for his village. This is a fact story. This is true story happened in Holland. we can call the another name of Holland is Netherlands. He is a brave heart and passionate love for his village. Read on the story to find what the little hero of Holland did to save his fellow man. Holland is a country where much of the land lies below sea level. Holland is a country that lies below the sea levels. Only great walls called dikes. Dikes means an embankment for controlling or holding back the waters of the sea or a river is called dikes. So only great walls called dikes keep the North Sea from rushing in, which means inside the country, and flooding the land. So the dikes is the center of the village. So the dike only saved them from the North Sea rushing in and flooding the land. For centuries, the people of Holland have worked to keep the walls strong so that their country will be safe and dry. The people of Holland, they have worked hard and they have built so strongly the dikes in order to make their country be safe and dry. Even the little children know the dikes must be watched every moment. And those children in Holland, they know that the dike must be watched every moment, and that a hole no longer than your finger can be a very dangerous thing. Even in the dike, if a size of finger size hole will make, and that will lead into a dangerous thing, that will make a dangerous thing. So all the children know that the dike must be watched every moment, and that a hole no longer than your finger can be a very dangerous thing. Many years ago, there lived in Holland a boy named Peter. Peter's father was one of the men who tended the gates in the dikes. So in Holland, many years ago, in Holland there lived a boy named called Peter, and Peter's father was also one of the men who tended the gates in the dikes, called sluices. Sluices means a sliding gate or other device for controlling the flow of water, especially one in a lock gate. So his father was working there for opening the sluices, and those ships will come from the riverside as well as the seaside. So the sluices gate will open and give way to them. So his father was doing that work there. He opened and closed the sluices so that the ships could pass out of Holland's canals into the Great Sea. One afternoon in the early fall, when Peter was 8 years old, his mother called him from his play. So one evening, when Peter was a 8-year-old boy, and he was playing with his friend. At that time, his mother called, "Come, Peter," she said, "and also I want you to go across the dike and take these cakes to your friend, the blind man." And his mother told him to take this cake go across the dike and take these cakes to your friend, the blind man. If you go quickly and do not stop to play. So she said that while you are going, don't stop for play. If you stop for play, you will be home again before dark. Which means, what she is telling is, if you will not stop means you you will be home again before dark. If you stay or if you stay for play, you will come in the dark. She said like that. She warned. So she told him that you come home, you reach home before the dark. The little boy was glad to go on such an errand. So the boy was very happy and he is happy to go for this work and started off with a light heart, which means a very happy heart. Happily, he started walking. He stayed with the poor blind man. He reached to his poor blind man and also stayed with them. And a little while to tell him about his walk along the dike and about the sun and the flowers and the ships far out at sea. Then Peter started describing while uh, he came to his friend. He saw that sun in the evening, the flowers and the ships far out at sea. So those things he was describing to his friend, blind friend. Then he remembered while he was talking to his friend, he remembered his mother wish that he should return before dark. And his mother told him, before dark, you should reach the home. So he remembered and bidding his friend goodbye. Then he said that, goodbye friend, my mother told me that I need to come to home before dark. So he set out for home. So he started walking to the home. As he walked beside the canal, he noticed how the rains had swollen the waters and how they beat against the side of the dike. So the water, the force of the water beat against the side of the dike, and he thought of his father's gate. And he thought his father's gate. I am glad they are so strong. Then he said that that's very so strong. That's why I'm glad. He said to himself, if they gave way, what would become of us? If that gate broken means, and what will happen us? These pretty fields would become covered with water. The water will spoil the pretty fields and everything. Then father always calls them angry waters and tells that his father always tells the water as angry waters. I suppose he thinks they are angry at him for keeping them out so long. Then he says himself that my father is keeping the water out, so the water is getting angry to my father. Then as he walked along, he sometimes stopped to pick the pretty blue flowers that grew beside the roads. So while he was returned to his home, so he stopped. Sometime he stopped and to pick the pretty blue flowers which is grow beside the road, or to listen the rabbit soft tread as they rustle through the grass. The rabbit will run through the grass and it will make a rustle sounds. So he stopped sometime to see these things. But oftener he smiled and also he laughed himself as he thought of his visit to the poor blind man who had so few pleasures and always so glad to see him. So he thought of his poor blind friend and he thought about him and he himself laughed because so he only had a few pleasures and always so glad to see him. Whenever he wanted to meet his friends, he was very happily went and met him. Suddenly he noticed that the sun was setting and that it was growing dark. The sun was setting and it started growing dark. The night started. Mother will be watching for me, he thought, and he began to run toward home. So he thought about his mother's and mother will be. So he thought about his mother, that his mother will be watching for me. So he started run towards home. Just then he heard a noise. It was the sound of trickling. Do you know what is the meaning of trickling? flowing in a small stream, a liquid. So he stopped and looked down. There was a small hole in the dike through which a tiny stream was flowing. So he saw that a hole, a small tiny hole from the dike. Through that, a tiny stream was flowing. Any child in Holland is frightened at the thought of a leak in the dike. As usually in Holland, in all the children, if they see any hole in the dike means they will scared. They will get scared. Peter understood the danger at once. Peter also understood the danger. If the water ran through a little hole, it would be soon make a larger one. If the water run through a small hole, it will make a larger one, and the whole country would be flooded. In a moment, he saw what he must do. Throwing away his flask, he climbed down the side of the dike and thrust his finger into the tiny hole. So he got down to the dike and he thrust his finger inside the hole, and the flowing of the waters was stopped. Oh ho, he said to himself, the angry waters must be stay back now. Then he said that oh ho to himself, the angry waters stay back now. I can keep them back with my finger. Holland shall not be drowned while I am here. Then he said that as long as I here, I will not let my country to be drowned. This was all very well at first, but soon it grew dark and cold. The little fellow shouted and screamed. Come here, he called, but no one heard him. No one came to help him. He was shouting. He screamed for help, but no one have come to help Peter. It grew still colder, and his arm ached and began to grow stiff and numb. He shouted again, will no one come? Mother, mother. He shouted, mother, mother, will no one come? But his mother had looked anxiously. His mother was waiting for him along the dike road many times since sunset for her little boy. She was looking the road of the dike for Peter, and now she had closed and locked the cottage door, thinking that Peter was spending the night with his blind friend, and that she would scold him in the morning for staying away from home without permission. So Peter's mother was waiting, and she was keep on looking at the dike road, but at last she thought that Peter have stayed at his friend. So she was thinking that we need to scold him in the morning for staying away from home without permission. Peter tried to whistle, but his teeth chattered. Chattered means feeling cold and frightened that one can't stop the upper teeth from against one's lower teeth. And Peter tried to whistle, but his teeth chattered with the cold, so he couldn't whistle. He thought of his brother and sister in their warm beds, and of this dear father and mother. I must not let them be drowned. So he thought about his brothers and sisters as well as his parents in the warm bed. Then he said that I will not leave them to be drowned. He thought, I must stay here until someone comes if I have to stay all night. So he took a decision that until someone comes here, I will not leave. If I'll stay whole night, no problem. The moon and stars looked down on the child crouching. Crouching means adopting a positions where the knees are bent and the upper body is brought forward and down. So the moon and stars looked down on the child crouching on a stone on the side of the dike. His head was bent and his eyes were closed, but he was not asleep. He is not sleeping. His eyes is closed. His head is bent. For every now and then he rubbed the hand that was holding back the angry sea. He rubbed to stop the angry waters out. I'll stand it somehow, he thought. So he stayed there all night, keeping sea out. So he was staying there for the whole night. Early the next morning, a man going to work thought he heard a groan as he walked along the top of the dike. Looking over the edge, he saw a child clinging to the side of the great wall. Groan means make a deep, inarticulate sound conveying pain. So a man heard that groaning voice, and he, looking over the edge, he saw a child clinging to the side of the great wall. Then he asked, "What is the matter?" He called, "Are you hurt?" "I am keeping the water back," Peter yelled. He shouted. Peter answered, little soundly, "Tell them to come quickly." The man, one who saw the Peter and went and also gave the alarm to the people. The alarm was spread. People came running with shawls. Shawls means tool resembling a spade with a broad blade and typically upturned side, used for moving earth, coal, snow, etc. And the hole was soon mended. So the people came, they came running with the shawls, and in a few minutes they mended the hole. They carried Peter home to his parents, and before long the whole town knew how he had saved their lives that night. To this day, today itself, nowadays itself, they have never forgotten the brave little hero of Holland. The story, The Little Hero of Holland, picturizes the unconditional love of a little boy towards his country and his people. Dear students, listen carefully the link given below and do the assignments. Thank you.